Look at David, he's a straight-A student, an athlete, and what are you? Nothing special, my aunt would say. Growing up, family gatherings were a minefield. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, or random summer barbecue at my aunt's house felt like walking into a trap. She'd be there, perched at the head of the table or leaning against the kitchen counter, her voice carrying over the clatter of plates and laughter, making sure everyone heard her praise her son, my cousin. He was the golden child, perfect grades, star of the track team, destined for greatness. And me? I was the punching bag she used to make him shine brighter. She'd weave these stories about his latest awards, his scholarship offers, his volunteer work at the animal shelter, and then she'd turn to me with this fake sympathetic smile. So, what's new with you? Still struggling in school? It wasn't just a question, it was a dagger, and she knew it. I was 14 when it really started getting under my skin. I'd sit there, pushing green beans around my plate, my face burning as relatives chuckled or exchanged glances. My parents would try to change the subject, but she'd bulldoze through, telling everyone how I was jealous of her son's success. She'd make up stories, how I'd supposedly rolled my eyes when he won a trophy, or how I tried to sabotage him by spreading rumors at school. None of it was true, but she had this way of making it sound so convincing. I'd go home after those dinners feeling like I was shrinking, like I'd never measure up. My parents started looking at me differently, too. They'd ask why I couldn't be more like him, why I wasn't trying harder. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if maybe she was right. Maybe I was just a failure. It wasn't just the verbal jabs. She'd pull stunts to drive the point home. At Christmas, she'd hand him a brand new gaming console or a fancy watch, while I'd get a clearance bin sweater 2 sizes too big or a dollar store notebook with a broken spine. He earned it, she'd say, her voice dripping with pity as she looked at me. Maybe next year you'll step up. I'd force a smile, my stomach twisting, while my cousins and uncles watched. She'd tell other relatives I was a troubled teen, that she was so worried about how my mom was handling me. I overheard her once at a family reunion, whispering to my great-aunt about how I was acting out and causing stress for my parents. I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, frozen, clutching a paper cup of lemonade. By the time I was 16, I dreaded family events so much I'd fake headaches to stay home. But my parents insisted we go, saying family was important. I'd spend those dinners counting tiles on the floor, trying to tune out her voice. She'd ramped up her game by then, telling stories about how her son was being scouted by colleges, how he'd won some statewide math competition, how he was such a role model. Then she'd pivot to me, her tone all fake concern. I just hope you find your path someday. I'd nod, my throat tight, wishing I could disappear. Things hit a breaking point when I was 18, at a big family dinner for my grandma's 70th birthday. It was at a fancy restaurant, all white tablecloths and clinking glasses. I'd been working hard to keep my head down, focusing on my own life. I joined a few clubs at school, started volunteering at a local food bank, and was feeling okay about myself for once. But she couldn't let me have that. Halfway through dessert, she launched into her usual spiel. How her son was headed to an Ivy League school, how he just won another scholarship, how he was making the family proud. Then she turned to me, her smile sharp as a knife. And you? Still figuring things out, I bet. The table went quiet. I stared at my cheesecake, my hands shaking under the table. But then something happened I never saw coming. My cousin, who'd been silent the whole time, slammed his fork down. His face was red, and he looked like he was about to explode. Mom, enough. You don't know the truth. The whole restaurant seemed to freeze. My heart was pounding. He stood up, his chair scraping the floor, and spilled everything. His perfect life was a lie. He'd been buying fake certificates online, forging report cards, even borrowing trophies from friends to pose with for photos. And the worst part? His mom knew. She'd helped him cover it up, all to keep her image of the perfect family, and to make me look worse. The table erupted into chaos. My parents were stunned. My grandma looked heartbroken, and my aunt just sat there, her face pale, stammering excuses. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. All those years of feeling worthless, of thinking I'd never be enough, and it was built on a lie. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I just sat there, numb, as my cousin stormed out and my aunt scrambled to save face. For the first time, I saw her for what she was. Someone so desperate to feel superior that she'd tear down her own niece to do it. Update 1, trying to process it all. After that dinner, everything felt surreal. I went home and just sat on my bed, staring at the wall, trying to wrap my head around it. All those years of her comparing me to him, making me feel like I was nothing, and it was all fake? It was like finding out the monster under my bed was just a shadow. But the hurt didn't vanish. I kept replaying her words in my head, all those times she'd humiliated me in front of everyone. I felt angry, but also weirdly sad for myself, for my cousin, even for her, in a messed up way. My parents were a wreck. They felt guilty for believing her stories, for pushing me to be more like him. They kept apologizing, saying they should have seen through it. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was glad they finally saw the truth, but another part was mad they hadn't trusted me sooner. We had some awkward talks over breakfast, where they'd try to make it up to me by saying how proud they were of me now. Felt nice, but it didn't erase the years of doubt. I didn't see my aunt or cousin for a while after that. Family group chats went silent, and nobody brought up the dinner. I heard from a cousin that my aunt was telling people I'd exaggerated the whole thing, that her son was just under pressure, and I was making it about me. Stung, but I wasn't surprised. She'd always twisted things to make herself the victim. I decided to skip the next few family events, saying I was busy with school. Honestly, I just needed space. But then something unexpected happened. I was at the food bank one Saturday, sorting canned goods, when I ran into my cousin. He looked rough, bags under his eyes, hair messy, like he hadn't slept in days. We didn't talk much, just sorted cans side by side. But as we were leaving, he mumbled an apology. He said he'd never wanted to hurt me, that he'd just gone along with his mom's lies because it was easier. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. I started focusing on myself after that. I threw myself into volunteering, joined a book club at the library, even started running to clear my head. It felt good to do things for me, not to prove anything to anyone else. But I still carried this weight, like her voice was stuck in my head, telling me I'd never be enough. I didn't know how to shake it. Update 2. A new twist and a big decision. A few months later, things took another turn I didn't see coming. It was summer, and I'd been invited to a cousin's wedding. I almost didn't go, knowing my aunt would be there, but my mom convinced me, saying it'd be a chance to show I was above her drama. I spent weeks stressing about what to wear, how to act, whether she'd try something. I ended up in a simple blue dress, my hair in a messy bun, hoping I'd blend in. The wedding was beautiful. String lights, a big dance floor, everyone laughing and toasting. I was starting to relax, chatting with some cousins I hadn't seen in ages, when I noticed my aunt across the room. She was holding court, as usual, but she kept glancing at me. I braced myself for another jab, but it didn't come. Instead, during the toasts, she stood up and gave this speech about family unity and forgiving mistakes. It felt like a dig at me, like she was painting herself as the bigger person. I rolled my eyes and sipped my soda, trying to ignore her. But then, out of nowhere, my cousin took the mic. He'd been quiet all night, sitting at the edge of the table, but now he was standing, his hands shaking. He started talking about how he'd spent years pretending to be someone he wasn't, how he'd hurt people by going along with lies. Then he looked right at me and said he was sorry, in front of everyone. He said I didn't deserve what his mom had put me through, that I was stronger than he'd ever been. The room went dead silent. I felt my face burn, tears pricking my eyes. My aunt looked like she'd been slapped. After that, people started whispering, and my aunt left early, claiming she felt sick. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was grateful to my cousin for finally standing up, but another part was angry it had taken so long. I spent the rest of the night dancing with my cousins, trying to shake off the weird mix of emotions. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged at a family event. But the real shock came a week later. I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled on the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from my aunt. No apology, just a long ramble about how she'd done her best and how I'd misunderstood her intentions. She said she'd been protecting her son, that I'd never understand a mother's love. But then she dropped a bombshell. She'd been jealous of my mom, her sister, for years. She said my mom had always been the favorite growing up, and she'd felt like she had to prove herself through her son. It was why she'd pushed him so hard, and why she'd torn me down. I sat on my bedroom floor, reading that letter over and over, my head spinning. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest I'd ever get. I didn't feel sorry for her, not exactly, but I understood her a little better. She wasn't some evil mastermind, just a sad, insecure person who'd hurt me to feel better about herself. I didn't write back. Instead, I tore the letter up and tossed it in the trash. Felt like letting go of something heavy. Final update, moving forward. It's been a year since that wedding, and things are different now. I don't see my aunt much. She's backed off. Maybe because she knows her act won't work anymore. My cousin and I aren't close, but we're civil. He's trying to figure out his own path, without the fake trophies and lies. I'm proud of him for that, even if it's hard to forget the past. I've changed, too. I'm more confident, less afraid to take up space. I've kept up with volunteering, and it's become a big part of my life. I love the feeling of helping people, of being part of something bigger than myself. I've also started writing, journaling at first, then little stories about my life. It's helped me process everything, make sense of the mess. I even shared one at a library open mic night and people clapped. Felt like a win. My parents and I are in a better place. They've made a real effort to rebuild trust, and we've had some honest talks about how her words affected us all. They're prouder of me now, not because I'm chasing some impossible standard, but because I'm me. That's enough. The biggest lesson I've learned is that I don't need to prove anything to anyone. For years, I let her voice define me, but not anymore. I'm still figuring out who I am, but I know I'm not the failure she made me feel like. I'm someone who's kind, who keeps going, who's learning to stand up for herself. And that's more real than any trophy on a shelf.